Hello, this is Adrian again, and this is Unit 9 of Grade Time. And today we're going to work with grammar. And the topic is modals of deduction in the past. So we are making some deductions about past events. To illustrate that, we're going to talk about the text on the previous page. Let's take a look at this text. This is the text about Amelia Earhart, okay? And she was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, okay? That's why she became very famous at that time, okay? And what did she decide to do? She wanted to go one step further because she had made a lot of flights, and now she wanted to go for the ultimate aviation prize and to be the first woman to fly around the world. And on June 1st, along with her navigation Fred Noonan, she set off from Miami in her plane, a Lockheed Electra, on what would be her biggest and final adventure. But something went wrong. As we all know, she disappeared mysteriously. And what happened to her? A lot of people were wondering, and they were making deductions and what might have happened to her, what must have happened to the plane, to her. So these were all things that people were thinking about in the past. And this is our grammar topic of today's class. Okay, let's take a look at some of the sentences taken from the text. Okay, we have here a text. About Amelia Earhart. Yeah, and then on July 2nd, while heading towards Howland Island, Earhart and Noonan disappeared. And the next day, it was on the news that Earhart had disappeared into thin air. So, since then, a lot of people started to wonder why. What happened? So most people thought that Earhart and Noonan must have run out of fuel. So they thought that was possibly the case. Or when you say must have, is even more than possible. That they were almost sure that was the case, that they must have run out of fuel. So they are making a deduction in the past. And when you say must have run out of fuel, they are saying it means that was almost, they were almost sure that was the case. If we continue, they say this: they couldn't have survived the crash. Here, what are they doing? They are saying that something was possibly the case. Yeah, that they couldn't have survived. But over the years, other ideas have developed about just what might have happened to the plane. So what was possibly the case to that plane? So what possibly happened to that case? But are we talking about now or past? We're talking about past events, okay? Let's continue here. One theory was that Earhart might have landed her plane on the tiny island of Nikumaroro. So, one of the theories. Are they sure about that? Not so sure. That was possibly the case. Yeah? So they might have landed. There is this possibility that they landed. Okay? In the hope of proving this theory, an expedition went to the island in 2007 to look for signs of the tragic flight. Bones were found that could have been human fingers. So that was possibly the case, that the bones found were human fingers, but they were not 100% sure. That was a possibility in the past. They could have been human fingers, but scientists were unable to say for sure if they were. In 2012, another expedition used underwater photography. Images were taken of what could have been an aircraft, but again, investigators couldn't be certain. So there was this possibility that that it was an aircraft, but they were not so sure. They could have been an aircraft. Okay? So when we use could have or might have, it is a possibility. That was possibly the case in the past, but we're not so sure. But when we use must have, so they must have run out of fuel, or they must have died, they couldn't have survived, they must have died. When you use must, we are more sure. That was almost definitely what happened. Okay, so we are making a deduction with more certainty when we use must. Okay, so going back to the exercise in the book, we have match 1 to 3 with A to C. Check your answers in the article on page 88, the article about Amelia. Then match sentences 1 to 3 with the rules. Let's take a look together. Most people thought that Earhart and Noonan must have, letter C, run out of fuel. Remember the text? So they are almost certain. It was almost definitely true that they ran out of fuel. So they must have run out of fuel. Number 2, they couldn't have B, landed her plane on island of Nicomaroro. Oh no, sorry. Let's take a look here. Yes. One is letter C. So they must run out of fuel. So that's what people think. Number 2, they couldn't have survived the crash. Okay, so they are deducing that it was not possible for them to survive the crash. And letter number 3, Earhart might have landed her plane on the island of Nicomaroro. So that is a possibility, even though they're not sure. Okay, so then Earhart might have landed her plane on the island of Nicomaroro. Okay, so let's see the rule. After we have seen all those sentences with might have, could have, must have, let's see the rule. To say something was possibly the case in the past, that was possibly the case, we use might, could, may, plus the present perfect. Have, done. Okay, so have plus the past participle. To say something was definitely not the case in the past, we use couldn't or can't have, done. Okay, present perfect. And to say that something was definitely the case in the past, we use must plus the present perfect. So this is number 3. So number 3, it was possibly the case in the past. Earhart might have landed her plane on the island of ta-ta-ta. So that was possibly the case. That was something that possibly happened. Okay. Number 2, to say something was definitely not the case in the past, couldn't. This is sentence number 2. They couldn't have survived the crash. So this is something that was definitely not the case. This definitely didn't happen. Okay? And number 1, to say something was definitely the case. Number 1, most people thought that Earhart and Noonan must have run out of fuel. This is possibly what happened, okay, in the past. Alright, so these are called modals of deduction. Alright, Now let's move on to the activity. Let's see here. We have this. We have this activity here, activity number 2. Okay, that you have to complete using the correct forms of the verbs in parentheses, using modals of deduction. Okay, I'll give you some minutes for you to do, and we'll be right back. See you later. Okay, so let's correct. Using the modals of deduction. Must, might, can, plus have, plus the past participle. So this is the case of the missing cake. Oliver. What? My cake. It's gone. Really? Yes, it was here an hour ago, and now it isn't. Who's taken it? Then Matt says, what about Dad? I heard him saying how hungry he was. In fact, I'm sure. So if he's sure, it must have been Dad. It must have been Dad. So because he's sure, and he's sure about something that happened in the past. That's why we use have. Must have been Dad. No. He. So it's something that possibly didn't happen. So it he couldn't have eaten it. He couldn't have eaten it. It was chocolate. Dad doesn't like chocolate. So that was possibly not the case in the past. True. I suppose Mom. So he's not so sure. But I suppose Mom could have taken it. Mom could have taken it. Maybe. No. It can't have been Mom. So that's possibly not the case. It can't. Oh, sorry. It can't have been Mom. It can't have been Mom. She's been out all morning. The dog. So it's almost definitely the case. He must have jumped. He must have jumped onto the table and eaten it. Yeah, probably. Are you crazy? The cake was in the fridge. The dog? It's not possible that the dog got it. So the dog can't have gotten it. Can't have gotten it. Yes. Are you sure it wasn't you? I mean, there is the possibility that you might have eaten it, or you could have eaten it and forgotten. I'm sure it wasn't me. So, if it wasn't me, Mom, Dad, or the dog, that leaves one person. Yes, it's definitely Matt. So, it must have been you, Matt. It must have been you, Matt. What? Me? Yes, and that explains why I have chocolate all over your mouth. Okay, that's a good one. Let's check. All right, it's all right. Everything is right. Did you get the idea here? Okay, so we have more activities for you to do in your workbook. Okay, page 83. So go there and do it. So bye-bye. See you next class.